everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary. As many of you know, we are done with the batch of mandolins that we've been working on for quite a while now. And in between batches, I do repair work, and I have 4 or 5 instruments here that need something done to them. Not that I normally do repair work, but for friends or if it's one of my mandolins or something, I usually can't turn them down. So we have a couple of my mandolins, one with where the fellow has a flat fretboard on it and the fellow wants to have it radiused. One has the fretboard that's just come unglued. I have a 1960 some Gibson F7 in here for a refret job, and this guitar and a fiddle to work on. So it is Monday morning early, and I'm going to work on this guitar first. Now this guitar is a little bitty truss size guitar, and it has sat unused for a while, and the top is caved in. So what I'm going to try to do is get this top off and re-brace this thing with a different bracing pattern to shore back up this whole sunk in area right here, and hopefully we'll be able to put this guitar back together. If not, I'll just build a whole new top for it, but we're going to see what happens. And that's where I'm going to start this Monday morning, with peeling the binding off and getting the fretboard, extended fretboard part here off. I'm going to pull this fret and saw that down and just try to get that off and get the binding off, and then see if we can't separate the top and the body without too much damage. Now this piece of binding from here to here was broke right here. It looked like the guitar had been dropped, and it just popped that piece of binding and broke it right there. So I've just taken a razor knife and separated that binding, and if I can work it out of that neck joint without doing too much damage, there we go. It should come off to this already break that's there. There. So we got the first piece of binding off. Now we'll go from here to that joint right there. Again, I'm just separating it with a razor knife and just going a little deeper each pass. Okay, that is the last piece of binding off the top. So now we can take a heat gun and see if we can coax the top off. Well, there we have it. The old top is off. Now it's just a matter of deciding what we want to do to fix it. And I think I'm going to rebrace this thing with long braces that run right up in this narrow area here all the way through on, say, a 25-foot arch or something like that to kick that back up and see if we can't get it all back together. That means I'm going to take all of these braces out and let's just see what happens here. Now that I can see down in here, I can guess from these watermarks, and these pieces here come loose and shifted around. My guess is this thing was leaned up against the wall and the floor flooded. Also, look here, you see these water stains on the top as well. So that's my belief, that it was stood up against the wall at some point in the past and the room flooded, you know, maybe an inch or two, and things start coming apart. Now all the braces and the bridge plate has been removed, with the exception of this shoulder brace here, which I'm going to leave for the moment. And now it's time to sand and clean and start looking at all of the cracks and seeing which ones need to be patched. Well, they all need to be patched, but the best way to go about patching them anyway. Now, before I glue any of the braces in, I thought I'd go ahead and glue the cracks in the top. There's two, one that's running almost from the tail block to the sound hole, and then another one here about 5 or 6 inches long right behind it. So I thought I'd go ahead and glue those up and before I glued anything else up. Time to clean up the mess that seems to gather on the bench every time you do a job and move on to the next repair. All right, I got this fiddle ready. It wasn't much of a job. We just had to put, it's a 5-string fiddle and he wanted fine tuners on it. So we had to take everything apart and get the fine tuners put in the tailpiece and then put everything back together. So that didn't take just short of an hour to do. But that repair is done and finished now. This repair is just a fretboard come loose. So I went ahead and took it all the way off and cleaned everything up, glued it back on, and can't do anything with that until tomorrow. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be able to put the strings back on it and it can be done. Now the next mandolin in the repair queue is this mandolin made in this shop in 1997, and it has a failed truss rod. And I don't use this style truss rod anymore because we've had more than one failure with this style truss rod. And so the customer wanted to have the truss rod replaced, and he also wanted to have the fretboard radius. Back then we were doing flat fretboards. He wanted to have the fretboard radius, and he wanted to have this little Florida extension cut off. So there's 3 or 4 things on the job to our list to do this mandolin, but I've already taken the fretboard off, and now I'm getting ready to carve down through here and get this defective truss rod out, replace it, and then start putting everything back together. So that's this mandolin here. Now it's Tuesday of the week, and I'm just got a phone call from a fellow who's bringing another mandolin for me to work on, something that somebody else made that he says is not noting right. And so I told him he couldn't have picked a better time because I'm right in the middle of doing repairs right now. So, so bring it on. But if you haven't figured it out yet, it's kind of chaotic whenever I'm in the repair mode, because you've got so many different things and you can only glue up one thing on this instrument right now, and then you have to move to the next and move to the next and move to the next. So the day is kind of full of trying to keep things straight in your head and moving from one instrument to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. And so I'm just going to run some footage of me doing each of the jobs on the instruments that I've already introduced to you, and we may have a new one to introduce here in just a few minutes. I don't know, but that's repair time around here. Okay, we picked up a short job here. It's a homemade mandolin from a fella in Morristown, and all it really needs is fret dressing. So we're going to dress the frets real quick, and the customer will be back this afternoon to pick this thing up. So. Now I have this little truss size guitar. It's the one that had the caved in area basically right here. And I've taken all of the bracings out of it. It had X brace pattern, cleaned up the inside as best I could really, cut some new braces, and in an effort to pull that sunken area out, we're going to brace it with this pattern, with these braces run this way, so that hopefully it'll take out that sunken in area. That's the idea anyway. So everything is ready. The two main braces are cut. I'm going to spread glue and clamp it up, and that'll be all I can do for that today. Okay, well that's that. One more step completed, and here in a few minutes I have to take Bonnie to the dentist, and so I think that's going to pretty much finish my work day out, and we'll come back and do more tomorrow. It is Thursday afternoon, and I have finally worked my way back around to this mandolin that needs the truss rod replaced, and I've exposed the truss rod down, and I'm now getting ready to see if I can extract this truss rod from this mandolin neck. So we'll get a close up of that. Okay, I've got it mostly exposed, like I said. I'm going to take and I'm going to try not to damage this area right here around the nut. So we're going to try to tap it on through. And then grab it back here with a pair of vice grips. Maybe we should try this. Kind of frightening to beat on an instrument with a hammer, isn't it? But we got it out. Now it's awful nasty and sloppy, and there's also a filler piece down under this part of it to kick the truss rod up. So we got to get all that out, clean this truss rod pocket out, and widen it for the new truss rod. Okay, I've cleaned out most of the trash from this hole. It's still sloppy and everything, but most of the old installation has been taken out. And this is the truss rod that we're going to put back in. I buy these truss rods. They're single way, but they're contained on their own. They don't pull on the wood of the mandolin neck itself. I buy these from Bitterroot Guitars, and I really like them. They've really done the trick, and they work good. And so this is the style of truss rod that I install now. So we have to drill a hole that way, big enough for that part to go in. Then we need to widen this channel, and I don't think we have to deepen it very much, but we have to widen it for that whole thing to come in and sit down in that slot. And that just simply takes hours of sitting here with the razor knife and cutting away wood without going too far. It's a very slow job, and that's what we're going to tackle next. Okay, now that truss rod slot has been widened and deepened enough to fit the new style truss rod in. I have access at the pocket, and it needs a little strip of wood laid over top of it, which is the way I install them nowadays. With I sink the truss rod just a little bit into the neck and then put a strip of wood across the top of it. So we've got to do that, and then tomorrow we should be able to glue the all fretboard back on. Here we have the filler strip cut. That's what that's going to look like, more or less. And I'll get some spring clamps to hold that down. And I'm getting ready to spread the glue and glue that filler strip in. Now I finished this repair today. It's the mandolin that we had to re-glue the fretboard on. It's glued back on and strings have been put on it and everything seems to be fine and dandy. Except for tuning it. It seems to be a-okay. So I'm going to put it in the case, call the customer and let them know that they can come pick it up anytime. And now we have the Gibson that we're going to work on. Apparently in its original case, and the customer that brought it in here is the fellow that bought it brand new back in the early 60s. And it says it's a F12. And interestingly enough, he keeps it tuned down 2 frets. So, and he said if he ever wants to play like other mandolin players, he just puts the capo on the 2nd fret. So I guess this is a D, and this is a G, and this is a C, and this would be an F. And that's the way he plays it. But anyway, it's here to have, he's played it till the frets are just about worn out, and he wants to have new frets put in it. So that's exactly what we're going to do, put new frets in it. It is now Friday, pretty late in the day, not too far away from quitting time. I spent the better part of the morning and the early afternoon doing all of the little trimming and sanding this and shaping that to get that top ready to go on that little truss size guitar that I'm replacing the braces and stuff on the inside. And so I now have that top glued back on the body of the instrument, and I took some video just kind of walking around, so it might be a little bumpy and shaky, but I took 2 or 3 different angles. So let me run those for you to look at now. This is that truss size guitar that has the top now entirely rebraced and glued on the body. Now here is the mandolin that I replaced the truss rod in yesterday and glued the little cover strip over top of the new truss rod. And so I'm going to spend the rest of the day with a piece of glass and some sandpaper just cleaning all this up and making sure that it's nice and level and ready to glue on the fretboard. And then of course the fretboard, the back of the fretboard is nasty and needs with excess glue and that sort of stuff, so that needs to be cleaned off as well. And then if the time permits, I'm going to glue this fretboard on this mandolin, and if it does, I will run some video now of that all jigged up. But if I don't get it done, then we'll do it on Monday. So on Monday, we'll start fresh with a couple of these repairs that are still left over from this week's work, and next week's video will have probably the beginning of the next batch, I'm assuming, unless I just get all covered up with other stuff. So that's coming up real soon anyway. And I'll invite you to come back for the next video, the next edition of the Ratliff Mandolins Weekly Production Diary. Hope to see you then. Bye. Okay, hold everything, stop the press. I think I'm ready to glue this fretboard on. Everything is cleaned up pretty much and ready to roll. And so I'm going to spread glue, clamp it, and you can come along for the ride. I have the nut rubber banded in place so that we can just use the same nut. I've got the fretboard extender propped up just a little bit. I got all my cawls and clamps. I usually use an awful lot of capos to do this on mandolins that have finished necks. I got some water over here in a rag. Spreader, we are good to go. I'm going to get the back of the fretboard just a little damp so that the glue will chase that water on a little deeper. I think I got a bit too much glue to begin with. there we go. She's glued on. That's where it'll stay till Monday. Thanks again for watching.